I guess now I have to begin. It's official. Okay. So if you did the meditation this morning, you may not need to settle into your seat, but if you didn't, try to settle into your seat. So kind of really bring your awareness to the fact that your body's sitting here. And quit thinking about the past or planning for the future, or even thinking about the other people in the room. Just trying to be aware of the different sensations of your body, sitting in the chair, the cushion. Then notice your breath. It doesn't matter if it's light or heavy or whatever it is, just notice. And try to settle your mind into being here in this moment, not anywhere else. Allow your breath to ease any tension in your body or in your, I tense my face, but just bringing my attention to that, breathing into that, allows it to soften. And try to think about the reason you decided to show up today. And you can pat yourself on the back for showing up. That's step one. Now try to set a positive intention to use this time well, based on whatever the reason was you decided to show up today. Try to expand your motivation to include the wish that it not just benefit yourself, but that I'll ripple out to benefit those around you. And we want to think about how we're interdependent. So we're interdependent on each other. We're interdependent upon countless beings we've never met. We eat food grown by others. We wear clothes made by others. We drive cars made by others. So we want to start training our mind to have the wish to benefit all these others, just to wish them happiness, to wish them to be free of suffering. Knowing that just like us, they're trying to find happiness. They're trying to avoid suffering. Just like us, they're not sure how to go about it. So that's why I show up to these teachings, whether it's by being here or whether it's reading the Dharma or watching a teaching or just reflecting on the teachings I've heard. It's to get in touch with this idea that we're all interdependent. We're all chasing happiness and ending up with suffering instead. But there's a way to figure out how to change that. And I find that Buddha's teachings provide me with that method. And as a bonus to that, as a bonus to reducing suffering in my own life, I do less harm to others. And I think that's wonderful. So let's recite the four immeasurables. $34. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. Sentient beings suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings be inseparable from the happiness that is free from suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment for friends and hatred for enemies. And then those of you who are comfortable reciting the refuge and bodhicitta prayer, it's on page 98. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, the Supreme Assembly, by the merits I create through listening to the Dharma. May I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly, by the merits I create through listening to the Dharma. May I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. So we've been kind of looking at the wisdom side of the method to end suffering. We know all the good qualities like compassion and love. In particular, we were trying to develop them for all sentient beings, not just those we like or those we approve of what they're doing, all that kind of stuff, but just knowing that if people were truly happy and free from suffering, they would do no harm, that it's in our own best interest. So you know, so we can be selfishly compassionate. So, but of course, we're trying to work on not having that quality of self-centeredness. And what comes in with that is our interdependence, that we really, being just self-centered doesn't work to our advantage because we're interdependent. And so the happiness and suffering of others is quite connected to ourselves, our own happiness and suffering. So it matters how everybody's doing. And as we know, when the world has wars everywhere and just all kinds of stuff, I mean, the world's a mess, and it sort of always has been. So this is like not new, but the fears get a little bit, like now it's like, okay, we're actually talking about, a climate that could just implode all life on this planet. That's kind of scary. And then we have people kind of hinting they might be open to using nuclear weapons that can wipe out everybody. Well, it's kind of scary. So, this is tough. And the solution isn't to try to keep controlling others by killing them. All that does is we're enemies, so but it doesn't mean we don't help people who are being harmed, at the risk of our own lives. I mean, it's all interconnected and complicated, so what do we do on the sidelines, those of us who are not in positions of power, other than voting and having our voice heard? So you vote, you have your voice heard that way. You also write letters, you also march. I mean, I don't know, get your voices out there on issues that are important to you. Because peer pressure works. We know this from all of us who experienced high school. So, it's something that we can do. But overall, we don't have a whole lot of impact on the decisions that world leaders make, So what can we do?
Come here.
And do what?
It's on our minds.
And work on our minds? Is that what you said? Okay. Is that what you'd say?
Yep.
That'll do. Yeah.
Yeah. This is a completed positive action.
Yes.
It can be peaceful.
It can also be peaceful. How do we be peaceful when we're scared?
So that everything has an end.
That everything has an end. This too will end.
With practice.
With practice, yes.
Breathe.
And
Breathe.
yes. And we need to see reality as it actually is.
Self-awareness.
With self-awareness. Yes, self-awareness helps. That's part of how we figure out whether we're, one of the things we need to do with self-awareness is recognize that we're not peaceful. How is that helpful?
You can recognize you're not peaceful.
And so we also recognize that we are scared. And the moment we, bring our awareness to that emotion, the emotion, intensity of emotion reduce.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. Okay, let me get someone else is also talking. Somebody.
You can recognize your state of mind by your breath.
We can recognize our state of mind by our breath. We can recognize our state of mind by lots of things. All sorts of physical indications will kind of be clues. Sometimes for many of us, that's the first clue we have when we're not really peaceful, or when we're scared, or when we're just anxious, whatever it is, angry, bored. We'll notice something in the body that will clue us in that we're not exactly calm and peaceful. So that's helpful. But is it true that just bringing our awareness there will necessarily reduce it? Who said what?
I don't think so.
You don't think so? Who agrees with Ann?
I think you will on a long term at least.
On a long-term basis, like if you sit there long enough, they'll finally wear out. I'm teasing.
But more times that you work with it, then
If you
understand.
work with it, working with it is an extra step. It's not, so we have to bring awareness to it. Why do we have to bring awareness to it? Because we can't work with it if we're not aware of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Where now is my mind? Where now is my mind?
Yeah, where now is my mind and what do I want to do with it? So one thing that we can do with it is not let it take charge. So that's sort of like letting your breath help you, not do anything, not act on that state of mind that's not so great, because then also some wisdom might bubble up. You might know the source of it. You might, if you give yourself some space, you might discover, oh, I'm nervous here because I don't know, whatever it is. I can make up anything to be nervous. Yeah.
Sometimes I try to see what the situations are triggering in me.
What the situations are triggering in you.
Because if I can recognize that, I can see what is the source of the fear, because that outside is just like a scenario that's happening to trigger something inside.
Yeah, and that's right. So external things are like conditions for our triggers to arise, but they're not the main cause. The main cause is that we have habits.
It's weird because sometimes these negative states of mind arise just like for no reason at all.
Well, we think that, don't we? We think these negative states of mind arise for no reason at all. They're just so fast, but it actually isn't true. The reason is we practiced it a lot. And so we meet similar conditions that we practiced it before, and it just comes up. Another way you could look at it is that you're really skilled at it. You've practiced it enough to where you're so familiar, it's automatic. And so the great thing about self-awareness is it allows you that moment of choice. So it comes up, we can't prevent it from coming up because it's such a strong habit, but we can choose what to do next, right? And so sometimes if we're under a powerful state of mind, the only thing we really can choose is to do nothing. We keep breathing, we walk away, we just, because we just need to allow ourselves to settle, so it's not something that, this is an automatic habit. It's like saying you can just stop yourself from sneezing. Not so easy,
The body's in control.
The body's in control. Actually, it's the mind that's in control. In sneezing, it might be the body. But our mind is not physical. So it's sort of separate from the body. So the fact that they're interdependent, aren't they? That's why we can feel our states of mind sometimes before we're aware of the state of mind, because it's already had an effect on our bodies. That's how habituated our responses can be, that the mind is very, very fast. So your mind's already had some unaware thought going on. We're unaware of it, we're not paying attention to it. And our body starts to give us stronger clues that we can sense better, probably because we're more in tune to looking at our body. Does that make sense? When you think about your life, you worry about your body. What?
Yesterday was having a discussion with my husband, and I was not aware that I was getting angry. Really, it wasn't. All of a sudden, it just was there. And then I thought, oh no, I felt really negative. I can't believe that I
How could you still be habituated? Oh, I mean, good grief, you should be a Buddha by now.
No, but it just really, I got.
But this is the problem.
So
but-
then I
but-
stopped that. I
Okay,
stopped the
good.
Negative thinking, and I just tried to quiet myself.
Why should you be discouraged? That's my question. Because,
But practicing is good.
okay, yeah, yeah.
One lifetime.
Could it possibly be you're just attached to being over it,
Probably, yeah.
you know?
Yeah, I want that so much. I
That's a
feel
positive
attached to
thing.
that.
It is a positive thing to want to be over it. It's not a positive thing to beat yourself up for not being over it.
She saw, so it's a moving part.
Yeah, all that's positive. I'm not talking about that. We've moved on. Okay, we're not talking about the response to that. Because these are all a series of mental events. You know, they're not one singular event. It's a whole bunch. Like this idea, first of all, you want to counter some of the thoughts you have, or at least investigate them. So one of the things you said was, and then all of a sudden I was angry. Well, that's not true. And you even kind of know it by the whole way you said it.
I lost awareness of, you know, I lost awareness of what was
And
going on.
So why
do?
okay, so this is what is meant in the teachings when it says our disturbing emotions obscure wisdom. We literally make our awareness foggy. It can't see things as they are because it's now got this veil of anger or fear or greed or jealousy or whatever on top of it that's obscuring our view. You know, so one of that, you know, so we want to be aware. So when we tell ourselves things like, oh, and then it was just on, you know, that's not true. Okay.
So does that mean that like getting that veil of anger, does that mean we can't see reality?
And when that anger is there, or that fear is there, or the greed is there, we cannot see reality. We are now in a state of exaggerated thinking. And that exaggeration might be about us. Oh, I'm going to be harmed here. You know, it might be, and what I mean by exaggeration is that sense of I, you know, that we've now clinging really tightly to our sense of I. It might be we're clinging really tightly to that person as being bad. My husband's an idiot, you know, whatever. So
Can I use that?
yeah. Feel free, because then you'll have something to really examine. So, you know, it's a strategy I know well. It's not effective. I also know that well. So anyway, so one of the reasons we want to develop wisdom is so that when we pause, we have something arise that's wisdom, you know, as opposed to a story that arises. And most of our stories do what? Like when you're angry, what do most of our stories do? Well, yeah, they definitely make it worse.
Justify our anger.
Yeah, we justify it. Well, if this guy hadn't said blah, 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 you know, if he hadn't looked at me that way, if he hadn't, you know, blah, 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 if whatever, we make all these stories up, you know, and we put it outside of us. You know, it's like, it's not mine, you know, the little not me. So that's a total fabrication. There's nothing true in it. It is not that it isn't true that people are conditions for us to be, you know, to have anger arise. The point is, it is our habit that is actually the cause of our anger arising. Because most of us, when we look back on conversations, we can see how we might have been able to handle this differently and not get angry. There are other options available, but we're not accustomed to using them, you know. So one of the ways to help us train ourselves in responding in a different way is to really think about, you know, all these parts, like, oh, I'm lying to myself about it just was there, you know. Then we kind of like, I look for the I in the picture. What was it I wanted out of this conversation that I wasn't getting, you know? So we can own that. Then we usually like ignore, this person loves me. You know, that's just not there at all. You know, that little piece of information, like maybe they're not doing this to make me mad. You know, so it's a communication issue. You know, and also sometimes, you know, a decision issue. You know, like it's like they want something else than what you want, blah, 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 and when nobody's getting what their way. And so now it's just, you know, getting over the top.
We're doing it to ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
We're triggered by something else. It's our own responsibility.
Yeah, totally. But some of us have to work at discovering that. That it is totally 100% our responsibility. We can, because we made up so many stories of the years and we believe them that it's someone else's fault. You know, we'll take some responsibility, especially like if we're having a bad day already, and then we just, you know, pick on, you know, the people at home, as you know, because we, you know, didn't have a good day at work or something. But the main thing is that we believe parts of these stories that say, yeah, you know, like we have this idea. This is why we fantasize, right? We fantasize that if everything was perfect, we'd be perfect. Yeah, that's a good imagination. Exactly. You know, I'm really a lovely person. It's just that, you know, the world's a mess. And how can you be lovely in a messy world? You know, it's just, you know. So we want to catch ourselves when we're telling stories that actually are supporting our chasing suffering, supporting habits that don't serve us well, that, you know, they really are getting in the way of our contentment, of our relationships, of our harmony, you know, all that.
It's quite remarkable though, because we have things that arise from way back and we don't know where they've come from.
Yep.
And there they are facing us. Can we look at them?
We don't need to look at the root cause of like a trigger. Okay, so yes, that's because according to the Buddha, we've existed since beginningless time. We have lots of things from way, way, way back. Oh, and we're not going to remember them until we're Buddhas. So, and again, that is this theory that somehow it's outside of us. Someone did something to us or something happened, some event happened, and that's what causes me to feel this way when some sort of similar circumstances arise. Well, that's never been true. No one makes us respond in a certain way. What can happen is that, like if you grow up with a lot of trauma in your life, you know, so you see a pattern in the world, right? You know, like the way your parents behave or something, or your siblings behave, or the world behaves, or whatever. And you connect those dots, and you know, and you just have an expectation that these people in my home, you know, they may say these words, but they actually act this way. And then when we grow up and we're finally out of that house and we're in a new house, you know, we expect our partners to act the same way as our family did. So they're not reliable. We don't trust them, you know. Now, it's not based on any new information. It's a carryover from old information. Or they may say something in the same kind of words that we heard before. And so that just becomes like, oh, I know where this is going. You know.
All coming from.
Well, maybe. You know, but you're not worried about where it's coming from. You're worried about where it's going. You know, that's why all of a sudden your defense comes up. So it can be very hard in those moments to step back going, this is not that situation. You know, and try to find out what's going on now, as opposed to reacting in a habituated fashion, you know, to, you know, give space for something different to happen. Now, how many people married their parents? See, this is part of the problem. So we're attracted to what is familiar. So what we want to do is become familiar with some different kinds of responses, you know, so that we can be comfortable with those. So it's, you know, it's like, because, you know, and when you grow up, you know, and you look back at your parents, you know, you realize that some of the things you just concluded were probably not true. It's probably just not true. You know, I mean, you know, we think we know our parents really well when we're teenagers or, you know, in our 20s or something, and we don't know them at all. No idea. We don't know them at all. They're our parents. They're not our friends. They're not, you know, they're not our buddies. They don't tell us everything. They don't tell us hardly anything. You know, we really don't know them, you know, but we really think we do. So, you know, and it's so interesting, but now you have an opportunity with new relationships to get to know them because they're not your parents. It's a different kind of relationship. You know? And so sometimes we throw up too many barriers to actually do that. You know, we're letting familiar conditions and draw where, you know, things that seem familiar to us, we're drawing conclusions based on other things. You know, so we put our defenses up first. And it's hard to bring them down. You know, pausing helps, being aware, oh, I'm getting kind of annoyed here. What's that about? You know, and we don't want to go externally. We don't go, well, because blah, 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 blah. He said, she said, blah, 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 blah. We want to go internally and kind of check out, what is it I'm hearing? What am I thinking? What is this? You know? And then allow the possibility that you know, that there's something different going on than what you think is going on.
It is good to always ask us, is it true?
Is it true? And you can go 7 times with that or something, you know? Is it true? You really, you say these statements, is it true? Do I really know that? You know?
Oh, also, even if it is true, does it matter?
Well, sometimes it might. So you have to, you know, but it's really, so if it's true, then you go, okay, that's true. What does that mean? You know, what response is appropriate here from my side, for me? You know, yeah.
Sometimes what helps me is I'll call a friend to get a reality check on why I'm feeling this way and what occurred. And 9 times out of 10, there's ignorance involved in my thinking.
Yeah, you see, that's a strong, you know, so that's one of the things that we can do. Now, sometimes we use our friendships in a dysfunctional way. You know, we'll call them up and we want them to support our point of view, you know? And so then we just have more justification for how we're acting and that we're irritated and blah, 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 blah. So we have to be aware of that. Other times we have relationships with, you know, siblings or with friends that are more spot on, where you can really tell them, I'm not asking for, you know, that's okay, dear, you're fine. I'm asking for, this is, you know, your assessment of this scenario, you know. So you have to have a, you know, you want to always check up on them too, you know, because they have their own triggers and they have their own stuff, but it is helpful. But then eventually, if you do that, you can do it for yourself, you know, not always, because then that blind spot hits and then we need to turn to someone else. Did you hear what they said? What did you think of this? You know, because we're often running. So,
think once a year they all get together and they put somebody up front and all the monks and nuns actually tell them what they have seen. with that
Someone's a year, your work group does it every time, like every period of time, you do that. So and it's not the whole place, although Thich Nhat Hanh did that. Thich Nhat Hanh would sit in the center and he would shine light on himself, and he would say what others had, what they told them, and though we would all, so that was something that was part of the practice that you did there, so but the main thing that was so helpful there was the fact that he said, you had to tell people within, 24 hours that they irritated you. And you couldn't talk about it until you weren't mad.
So you have to stop being mad less than 24 hours.
I'm sorry?
So you had to control your emotions and transform that in less than 24 hours so you would be able to talk to someone?
No. You just couldn't, you had to let them in on the fact that I'm irritated. Yep. Or you're at least have the condition to go to anger, because that's one thing that's very specific in Buddhism is the degrees of things. Like when they talk about the 3 poisons and they talk about anger or aggression or aversion or malice, that's when you want to kill them. So that's a very strong anger, but they're all degrees. So irritation definitely leads to anger, so that's why you have to recognize it as soon as that arises. But then you don't discuss it until you have chilled out, so that you can then, you tell them that you're irritated, but you don't discuss it. And then when you're ready to discuss it, then you discuss it. But usually what you would end up doing is going, I'm sorry, it was all about me. 3 days later, you're going, what about you at all? Funny that, so if you weren't able to do that for 7 days, you had to bring it to the group, like your work group, your family, kind of thing. And then, so that you could get help with what to do with it. So, but the point is that I had a point. Did I have a point?
Were we talking about like talking to friends?
Yeah, talking to friends and learning how to do it in your own mind, to really kind of look, okay, where am I in this picture? What's going on with me, that I'm getting agitated,
You may not actually need anybody else. If you do the pause, it will come to you.
That's true for some people. It depends on past life practice. I mean, some people are really good at this. Other people really need some help. So it takes time. And that's why Thich Nhat Hanh built it into the system. If you can't do it yourself, then then you reach out and you can actually, before the 7 days, you can have a third party come in and help mediate. Yeah.
Maybe in specific situations would be good to talk to the person anyway, because there are like misbehaviors that the person might have, like habits that are maybe not appropriate, that will keep on happening
and triggering you.
And if you're friends,
no, wrong. You're coming at this from the wrong angle there. Okay. It is true that in relationships, we sometimes have to talk about each other's actions and say, when this action happens, that this is what comes up for me. Okay. Is there any way that you could not do that when I'm around, because you need help with that, whatever. Sometimes it's inappropriate, like you have to teach your children not to, blah, blah, blah. But you have to be very careful, because first you need to clean yourself out of it before you can start telling someone else how to be,
They're just a trigger.
That's all they are.
Yeah.
So
if you live with someone on the everyday life,
Still a trigger.
you don't want that trigger to be there every day. Like if he knows how to push.
yeah, but that's because you're not controlling you.
Oh yeah, but for example, if he knows how to push her buttons and he keeps on doing that every day,
Then you leave.
It's an unhealthy situation.
Yes, it is unhealthy, and you leave. You can't fix other people.
But not trying to fix, but just expose.
Yo, bull. You're trying to control them. And that's all that does is exerting your will over someone else's stuff. You know, the only way to control your triggered behavior is you. You know, you're an adult. We don't have to respond to our triggers. And this is hard. It's hard to accept that that's really the truth. We can, think, because we can leave relationships. It's true. Sometimes, it's like, oh, yeah, it'll take a couple of eons before we can get our act together enough to get along. And that's hard.
But there's many circumstances where people don't have control. They can't get out of the situation.
Yeah. So you still think you can control the other person?
No, I never think you can.
You've given that up.
That fact.
Yeah.
Painful, but I guess to Hernan's point, practically, it's unfortunately like when you're at Thich Nhat Hanh's, everyone's there of a
Right. Okay. So that's it. We don't need the scenario. So, okay. So you're in a situation where you get triggered all the time and you can't leave. So what can you do? Go inward.
I think that's the practice,
Is to go inward.
to go in
Yep.
and not be triggered by the trigger.
Well, accepting that the cause of being triggered is you, not the other person. They're a condition. Okay. This doesn't mean that that you're going to get it. That even with your awareness and everything else, it doesn't mean you're going to stop being triggered.
Right. But that's what you said. You have a choice.
Well, you have a choice on how you respond.
How you respond.
And if our response is to keep trying to control them, we are missing the opportunity to work on ourselves, of just not acting on being triggered. This is where people, Thich Nhat Hanh also said, all families should have a breathing room in their house where they just go breathe. So you take your child's hand, you walk into the breathing room. Yeah, that's what timeout's about. But it's just, so we need to understand it's hard to control ourselves, isn't it? Good luck trying to control someone else. That does not mean we can't talk to each other about what's going on with us. It doesn't mean we can't ask for help from the other person. But we need to understand that it isn't their fault that you're being triggered. That's your history that's in action. So finding the speech, the way to talk to each other about these things so that we're not blaming. So we're not having an expectation that, I'm sorry, but you need to change. If you're not leaving, and they, like I said, but information may help. The other person in relationships might be able to suddenly, that they've talked about it, and they may see the scenario unfolding and they may get it, but they may not.
It's their problem, not yours.
Well, you have to really be able, just like from our side, when someone's a constant trigger to us, recognize that they're not doing it on purpose. That this is just their habits and they're not trying to trigger you and they don't understand. That's a fact. So many times, have you ever told somebody how you feel and they go, but why? That's helpful. Which, who knows why? What's that about? It's just the way it is. And I'm sorry if you don't know. We can't understand each other that well, like that. We don't have the same experiences. We don't have the same nuance. We don't have any of the same stuff. you know, except that we suffer just like this. But of course, we have a great story around ours and they have their own story around theirs. So it's, you know, but so we can talk about it. And things can, you know, we can be more gentle with each other and their triggers, which is great. That's great news that we can do that. But we can't hold out for that to happen in order to change ourselves. We still have to kind of go, okay, I'm getting triggered over and over and over again. What can I do to at least not escalate it?
We don't even understand ourselves.
No, probably most of the time.
That's why all of a sudden I'm angry. It's because you don't understand your own triggers.
Well, you're not paying attention close enough to what the that very first tightness, the contraction, I think Pema Chodron calls it, and you contract, you know, and so the better we are at that, then it's much more manageable to be able to walk away or whatever, or just say, I'm sorry, I'm gonna, you know, we need to table this discussion because I'm, you know, and walk away, you know, and then the other person has to, you know, kind of go, okay, you know, and give you space. And they don't, not much you can do. Were you ever one of those spouses that kind of followed your partner around the house during an argument? Don't do that. It doesn't work. Yeah.
For me, I try to go to the place that, okay, I don't know what their day was like. And I know they are really suffering and not take anything personal.
Yeah. Because it actually isn't personal about you. It's personal about them, you know, which is sort of why we can't understand each other's triggers very well.
That takes a pause to do it.
Yes, always takes a pause. Yeah.
Sometimes if your partner isn't on the same wavelength, because maybe they don't understand the practice, it's harder to have a conversation as well.
Yeah, yes, it can be. But we can not act out. We can. We can't control whether the other person does or not, but we can choose. And it's hard and it takes a lot of practice, and we will slip up and we'll keep acting out and then we'll keep blaming, and we'll, you know, it's an up and down process. But it's overall, the more we, you know, it's being able to just say, I don't want to keep experiencing this scenario again and again and again. So I am not going to continue the conversation, whatever it is that keeps it going, feeds it. You know, I'm going to leave the house. I'm going to, you know, go sit quietly. But then, you know, and you may have to get, you know, have some sort of thing like, when I do this, I am not attacking you. I'm, you know, about to lose it. So I just need to get out, you know, I'm not abandoning you. I'm just gotta, you know, do this, you know, I understand that this is my trigger and it's, you know, and it's not your fault, but I am triggered. I need to do, you know, take care of myself. Yes.
Yeah, that was our practice too. In the circle, whatever came up in the week at the weekend, it was about saying, when you did that or said that, it made me feel.
Or just, I felt. Not you made me.
Exactly, I felt this way. So you weren't attacking the other person for whatever they did or not did.
Yeah. Yeah. And then slowly, you might have something bubble up that says, oh, you know, I understand what's going on with me now, you know, so, and then it loses some of its power.
Some awareness.
Once you have awareness, yeah.
That's what meditation.
This is why we practice.
Aspect of meditation. Get your calm abiding and then go into analytical passion. It helps you really analyze and get to the nitty-gritty.
That's right.
BS that you're putting on yourself.
That's right. That's why why sitting and whether it's meditation or not, whether it's analytical meditation or Vipassana or Shamatha and Kamabhati, most of us don't have those skills. Okay. But we do need to settle the mind. And we need to reflect on things that are causing us suffering. And so sometimes we can't do that in the moment. There's no space for that. We can't just say, I'm sorry, to your boss, I'm going to go take a meditation for, 10 minutes now. It's just not like that. But there's no question we need to do that, to keep. That's right. That's why it's called practice.
Can't take 10 minutes from
Right.
work, it still helps.
This is what I've been talking about all along. It says the more you do it, the faster you get. The mind is very, very fast. So when we train our minds in healthier ways to respond, eventually it will be very, very fast. You won't need to go take a timeout for 30 minutes, every time. Sometimes you will still, because we're not Buddhists yet. So it's just, it's and understanding that, since we're not Buddhas yet, we get frustrated, or we're having maybe work is really tiring and exhausting and stuff, and we just don't want to deal with this at home, but we have to, so it's just about acknowledging instead of going, oh, why did I get mad? I should be over this habit by now, is really being able to just, well, I'm not. That's okay. I still have Buddha potential. I'm just not there yet. So. Analysis paralysis. Yeah, I have that for tomorrow for my Windows. So I have decision and paralysis. So.
Does conditioning ourselves take a role in these aspects?
Well, that's what we're talking about. Is you condition yourself by thinking, so that getting in the habit of learning how to settle your mind, meditation's great for that, and then bringing up a scenario and using, then that's when you go, oh, it didn't just happen just like that. If I, so as soon as I recognize that I'm getting irritated or something, we start looking at what is my habit. Oh, I start telling stories to myself about how it's their fault or how I get mad at myself because I didn't control it before the fact, and stuff. And that's an interference. When we start beating ourselves up, we're also not dealing with the problem. So we just, we have to be able to keep stepping back. If I was my best friend, what would I say when I looked back on this? Because we need to treat ourselves with kindness and friendliness, as well as honesty and analysis and all those things. But we block ourselves as soon as we put, because dislike is an agitated mind. So when we dislike ourselves, that agitation obscures our wisdom. So according to the Buddha, ignorance is the main root of all these other disturbing emotions. And that ignorance is about how we actually exist. That we have this notion, we grab onto a notion of I, of self, of me, and consequently you, other, all this stuff. We hold on to it as if it's something you could actually hold on to. And we get very indignant if we think that that I is not being treated properly, all our disturbing emotions arise around it. We get greedy, we get jealous, we get, whatever. So it's really good in those moments where we realize, ooh, I've been hooked, that you look at the I part of that. I've been hooked. We're grasping at that I, and we, the more we can loosen our grip on this sense of I that is exaggerated. I should be beyond that now. I should be better than that now. I should be, I should be treated better than that now, whatever. I mean, all of those are an exaggerated sense of I. I is just a mere label on an incredibly fast moving series of events.
Best time to look forward.
Yep. So that as soon as you feel like, that trigger is just, that's the beauty of triggers, is that is when we're triggered, that I is really being firmly grasped. And so that's an excellent thing to bring your self-awareness to that, just, to really see, how am I holding my I? That we have some sort of fixed notion of this I. And when we analyze it, when we take time to analyze it, you're not going to be able to find that I. So ways in which you practice with this are things like, okay, so say you want to get up. Say you want to get up and get a drink of water, or say you've got a drink of water and you just take a drink of water. How does that happen? How does taking a drink of water happen?
Recognize that you feel thirsty.
Oh, so I feel thirsty. Okay, what feels thirsty?
Body or the mind recognizes the body feels thirsty.
Okay, so the mind says body's thirsty. Then what happens?
For what?
Think, do I want to get up or do I want to wait?
Okay, so you want to get up. What happens?
Brain sends a signal to muscles so you get up.
Yeah, so you sing a signal. So there's signals going. So your body is told to get up by the mind. Where's the I there?
I'm thirsty.
I is the possessor of all of these actions.
Wrong. That's what we think, though.
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
That's what we think, don't we? There's an I over here that possesses this body and mind, and the I's decided to quench the thirst. And the I tells the body what to do. Not true. That's not actually what happens, is it? It's a series of mental and physical events, aren't they? So when I reach this cup and lift it up and take a sip out of it, what's actually happening?
Reaction.
So there's some chemical reactions going on. What's actually happening? A gazillion signals are helping my arm reach out, touch the cup, know the cup's there, pick up the cup, blah, da, 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 da. What if I'm mindless about it? What can happen? You drop the cup, spill the cup, so you need both the mind and the body here to have it work, especially the older you get. So you have to pay attention. Unless it's automatic, like driving a car, or getting mad. So, but
The I will definitely act up when you raise that cup and you see that there's no water.
okay. Is it the I that does that? What notices if there's no water there? Well, you have your eye awareness. It can see there's nothing in the cup. And then the mind interprets that, says there's no water in the cup, and then I look out for Margaret and say, Margaret, would you get me some water? She's not here. Oh no. So,
Continuing with this thought experience, sometimes, you're playing like when you're meditating in this fashion, right? You always, the doubtful aspect of you always tends to feel like it's stronger. I don't know if anyone has that situation. So then sometimes in my mind, I think, well, maybe the mind is I.
Right.
So then I go to the analysis, well, which of these thoughts, but it's a difficult obstacle to surmount, not thinking. So how could I perhaps start investigating that when I start to feel like the I is the mind?
Okay. So if the I is the mind, what happens to the body?
Something that the mind is inhabiting.
Apparently.
Yeah, because and remember, like I understand that it's because the attachment it feels like that, but again,
It's more than the attachment. It's actually a misknowing. It's really imputing on this body and mind this other thing called an I.
Yeah.
Now, there is an I that exists. The I is the mere label, right? They call it even the mere I goes from life to life. You know? So it isn't that there's no I, but I is a label. What does that mean?
Is it the awareness of the body and the mind?
Oh, that's just mind. Awareness is just mind.
It's conventional, it's what we call
What is?
the I, the mere label.
The mere label is a mere label. It is not the body and mind.
sure.
In fact, it's so much not the body and mind that we call our parts different names.
To your sense of identity, that's a way.
Well, no, the sense of identity is an imputation we make on top of something that's merely labeled. And we grasp back to it. Yeah.
I was gonna say, I think the I is the observer of the mind and the body, because the mind has thoughts.
Where's the I?
So we're behind all of it. The consciousness.
Who's
of the
we?
universe.
Where is that? What is that?
We don't know.
Okay, according to the Buddha, it's not there at all.
So there is no I.
There's nothing more than a label of the body and mind. That is, we call I for convenience of communication.
Doesn't that go to the concept of emptiness?
We're talking about emptiness now.
What always kind of grounds me, that's something I can understand, is I say, well, you know, and it's in the teachings, they say, why do you say my mind, my body? You're grasping at that there's something
Owning this.
owning it. So that's what.
Yeah. And so, and of course, one thing that's difficult is we need language to talk about it, right? And language really, you know, we can see how well we can communicate with each other, you know, so it's not perfect. It's not an ideal system, but we need to start getting very precise when we analyze this, you know, like, you know, that you can break the microphone. Excuse me. This idea that there's something separate that's controlling this body and mind or telling it what to do or blah, blah, blah. The Buddha said that's our mistake. There isn't anything separate.
So what's the problem with making this label permanent?
Well, then what happens when you change? Well, disturbing emotions arise. Have you ever had friends who don't, like, say you go back to visit home and there's a high school reunion and you're very different than you were in high school, at least you think you are, you know, blah, 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 you're probably wrong. But so do you get those kind of reactions of people like, wow, you really look different, you know, or you really don't look very different, or your voice is different, you know, whatever, you know? They expect you to be a similar way. That's grasping at permanence. Yeah. What's the problem with that? It's not true. There's no wisdom in a lie. You know, I mean, so we need to understand that there's a reason why we want to investigate this habit we have of imputing something extra to this mere I.
Is that our ego?
Ego is one of those things we're imputing onto it. Because we really think there's something in control here, right? when it's really just a series of mental and physical moments that arise in every moment and disintegrate in every moment.
Did you say something that the mirror eye goes with us?
Yeah, the mirror eye is the label that we give to the subtle mind, and the wind it rides upon is what goes from life to life.
We heard that said in a slightly different way, that when we die, our ego, along with our prana, leave. Everything else.
That's the breath, right, prana?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, that's the wind.
Yes.
So it's our ego, that just means all our karmic seed also go with us. Our habits go with us, but it's on a subtle mind, and none of this is physical, this mind part. Okay. It's not like we've got a shopping bag full, although they teach that somewhat in, I think, Zen, but it's different in this tradition. We don't have this storehouse full of little seeds. Okay. But it's just I'm sure it's just semantics, but is this, but it's that, but it's habit, it's tendency. Because the mind never ceases to exist. My mental continuum has existed since beginningless time. Same is true of all of us. And all those mosquitoes and all those, whatever. All minds have existed since beginningless time. Okay. We have a lot of habits from all that time. Mental habits. That's what produces the next moment of those mental habits, is the habit. It's just mind produces mind, just like, an apple seed produces an apple tree. Okay. So it's a very subtle thing that exists that we label I, because it's still a mind body. They're interdependent, but there's nothing extra out here that you can say is the self that owns these things or controls these things, that somehow is different and is permanent out here. Not in Buddhism, that's not what is taught. That this idea is something we add on to what's there. And it appears like that to us. I mean, it's not like we just aren't looking deeply enough to see how things actually exist.
So that would be very simple, because the thought of I am more than the mind and the body.
Right, that's
makes
right
it
there,
very-
boom.
Yeah.
That's grasping in an I that doesn't exist. The good news about this means that we are not defined by our past. The only thing that we really have control over is our response to whatever's happening right now. Now, if we keep, choosing to respond, this is why pausing is helpful, choosing to respond in a new way than what we used to do, we will develop new habits, hopefully more skillful habits. And what unfolds for us is better. But it's exactly that. There's something more than just this series of moments of body and mind that we're imputing. That does not exist. And if you look for it, if you try to find that controller I, that possessor I, when you actually deconstruct an action, all you're going to find are different mental and physical events.
Is it what they call in quantum physics the observer?
The observer would be the awareness, but that's all mind, still mind. There's nothing separate from that observing.
I'm not going to lie, this is very confusing.
It's very hard as well.
Yes.
Because we don't go around thinking that, there's an I here that's owning everything. We just act as if that's true. It's not that we're really consciously doing that, you know? So it is really hard. This is why when you have those moments where that I of yours really, you know, becomes big, like when you get an award, you know, or you get, you know, accused of something you didn't do, you know, that it, you know, we want to look at that I and recognize that I never existed at all.
So if there's no I, what's the driver for compassion? What's the driver for
Mind. We had the habit, and this is, the Buddha said the fact that we all have compassion, even though it's not universal compassion, is the proof of Buddha nature. Yeah.
When you
Venerable
talk to
Ten.
But just a second.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah. Can you hold up? Yeah, go for it.
What happens to all the memories and the life experiences that seem to be stored up in the I or in the self? Is that what gets then, are those the imprints on the mind stream?
Yes.
And we don't have access to them, right? Until we're
not now. Or until we've got much more strong concentration. They say that when you reach certain levels of absorption, you can remember some of your past lives. And in fact, there's a point at which you can read other people's minds.
Okay.
So,
and how does the enlightened mind interpret those events, or do they?
They don't. There's no
They don't.
conception in enlightened
Oh, there's
mind.
no
They
conception.
they just experience everything directly.
In a state of compassion and wisdom, right?
Oh, that's always just present. But they don't have to think about it. It's just what their natural state is.
But
it's what our natural state is too.
There's no need to make sense of past events and life experiences then?
No, they just know. They just know. There's no ignorance there. So they just know what happened, what is happening. They just know. It's not they know cause and effect. Like we have doubts because we don't know all the causes. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I had a question. So still talking about this concept of no I, when you're having conversations with yourself.
There isn't a no I. There is an I, but it's merely the label that we give to this body and mind.
So when you're talking to yourself or reflecting about certain situations or events, like is it a mind?
It's the mind doing all that.
With itself, so to speak, right?
It's just what mind does.
Right.
There isn't something else directing the picture. It is the mind itself. The mind thinks, the mind's aware, you know. That's what it is. That's what it's defined as, clear and knowing. It's just this faculty that knows. But what does it know? What we expose it to.
And is the brain the holder of mind?
No. The brain is a physical support for the mind in this body, which is why a mosquito didn't have a chance to become enlightened in this life, because his physical support for his mind is terrible. We have a very sophisticated support for this mind in this life, so we can work with it. You know, but it is not the same thing. That's when, you know, even when scientists try to isolate consciousness in the body, they can't.
When someone has mental illness, is it the mind that is ill?
It depends on, well, Lama Yeshe was fond of saying, we're all mentally ill. It's just a matter of degree. Our ignorance keeps us that way. Okay. But you can also have brain damage. And so your physical support for that mind is hurt. So it doesn't always function. But if you've ever known, like my dad had Alzheimer's, and, you know, and then all of a sudden, you know, he would just have these lucid hours, you know, where all those memories were there and and, you know, and then they weren't. So the brain was damaged, but the mind wasn't. And eventually, this physical support fails. But when this body fails, what fails with it? Well, the eye consciousness, the ear consciousness, the nose consciousness, the things that are, that are reliant on this body. Okay. The subtle mind that's not part of these sense consciousnesses finds a new body.
And you also call that the mirror mind also.
They actually call it the mirror eye.
Or, I mean, the mirror eye.
Because it's a body of mind. The body's this subtle wind that moves the mind. This is not easy. However, the less we grasp an I, this can't happen to me, this shouldn't happen to me, the less we suffer. The more we can take our experiences from moment to moment to moment to moment, that doesn't mean don't plan. No. It has nothing to do with that. It means that our choices exist actually in moments. It's like you can have a great plan, but then if you don't actually choose to implement it, it's all it is a great plan somewhere else, it's like that eye. It doesn't control what we do, does it? The plan.
Even if you implemented it.
Yeah. Yeah, what is it? Man plans, God laughs. Buddha would just say it's cause and effect. So. The easiest way, no, that's not true. That's a lie. The easiest really isn't in this picture. But one way to remind ourselves is the fact that everything's a dependent arising. So the I of this moment is a dependent arising. It is the cause of the I of the next moment, which is the cause of the I of the next moment. But the I of this moment ceases because the body and mind of this moment deteriorates. And and then it arises because physics teaches us this. Everything's changing constantly. Is there a continuity? Yes. Otherwise, we wouldn't, things would just keep, moving around for us. But no, there's continuity. This moment of this table leads to the moment of the next moment of this table. Does it last forever? No. But if you look at the continuum of all the parts of this table, did they ever cease to exist? No. It's so cool when you think about how all the physical phenomena in the universe is made up of the same parts, same elements. Look how varied that's up. I mean, that's really kind of just amazing. But don't grasp. It's just a moment. Our consciousness, although it appears now to be confined, the Buddha said it's our ignorance that's confining it. An enlightened mind pervades everything. It's everywhere. It has no boundaries at all. The boundaries come from our ignorance of grasping at that I. That's what gives us that narrow view. So if we lessen that grip, it can hold all those memories. Because it has no boundaries. It's not limited in terms of physical space because it is not physical. Yes.
Does that also help that you feel more free because you're making choices without being attached to who you think you are, like that image?
Yeah, you can make choices according what your wisdom and goodness, sees in that moment.
Right.
So, you can choose, okay, this is how I understand, and do that. You're not limited to what you've done in the past. It means we have a lot of power, yes.
I was gonna say, is the I like the unmanifested, and every time we try to give names to things because of the manifest,
No.
they become not the I?
No, it's manifesting as a label. It's merely a name. Just like Tom.
Right,
Tom
because
is just merely a name put on a particular set of body and mind. That's all it is. I's the same thing. And who invented it? We did.
Why did we think we needed that?
Because we grasp at self. And so then there's other. So I need a name and you need a name. And that's how simple we are. I, you. And then later we go, oh, but it needs a name like Tom. But that's all for being able to communicate, right? But we impute on top of that something more permanent. There's a Tomness there. If that were true, then when Tom comes out of the womb, you wouldn't have to name him because it'd be stamped on him.
Did the Buddha say there was a beginning?
No.
This mere I, or an
No.
end?
No. No. What ends, what can end by the choices we make is our suffering. There's the truth of suffering, the truth of the cause of suffering, the truth of cessation of suffering, and the truth of the method. So this is where, one of the things that can motivate us is we don't cease. So if we want to continue for eons more suffering, just keep doing the same old thing. Because we'll be stuck in this cycle of birth and death, birth and death, birth and death, birth and death. The good news, when we stop the cycle of existence of birth and death, we don't cease to exist. We just don't exist in this existence that's the nature of suffering. It's considered blissful. That existence is blissful, but not this existence. This existence where we grab, we end up, being merely labeled Tom, and Tom dies. But then that same mind goes into something that's called, Jiminy Cricket. I don't know. Doesn't literally do that.
Please couldn't say there's no I.
No, there's no I. Because when you think about it, as soon as we think I, what do we think? I is a relative term, isn't it? What does I demand? Well, and you. Well, and we automatically get dualistic. I is a dualistic term. I only has meaning if there's a you. Self only has meaning if there's an other. Those things exist because of our grasping. This is very tough stuff. But it's really important to try to read about dependent arising, think about it, and mostly just being able that when we're reflecting on things, recognizing it's less than what we're grabbing at. Our triggers are less than what we're grasping at. It's just a mere habit that we have practiced a long time in response to certain conditions. We can change that. We can't change the conditions because they're a ripening of past actions, but we can change our future. I know, we're all tired now?
I think it's fascinating. It is.
It is interesting. But being able to
Of course, that's fine.
know it. It's different.
And I'm grasping.
I know, I'm grasping at the fact that it's interesting. I'd rather think about it than be it, this is the problem. It's not easy. But it is where freedom exists. Yeah. All Buddhist schools, regardless, and all the Buddhist teachings, all say there's no self that exists the way we grasp at it to exist. But that doesn't mean we cease to exist. It just means we're giving too much power to the label self. Okay, I'm tired, so let's pray. Let's dedicate all this positive effort of trying to understand something that's not easy to understand. And we're doing it because we're trying to, suffer less and cause less suffering. That's a very good reason. So what am I doing? What am I doing? Is it? No. Oh, there it is. To the wrong page. Okay. So take a moment to just rejoice in your efforts. Think about the intention you set at the beginning. Feel good about trying. Because it really is true that just even think, the Buddhists say, just thinking that things might not exist the way they appear to us shatters our grasping, that's how you start. If you never think about it, never have considered it, then you can't change this habit. So. Oh, I always forget you can't do it that way. Sorry, I'm still having technical challenges. Share screen. If you hit share screen before it's on your screen, you can't share that screen. It's very irritating. It's not doing what I want it to do. So now we're going to take the merits, the positive results that will come from these positive efforts. We want them to ripen on others to bring them happiness or resources or whatever it is they need. Oh, it's on this page, 246. And think about all the wonderful things that have been occurring in the same time that we've spent this morning, this afternoon, whatever it is, all around the world. Probably the universe, many universes, who knows? Because this is the manifestation of our Buddha nature, all those moments, and we can rejoice in those too, So, may all beings everywhere plagued by sufferings of body and mind obtain an ocean of happiness and joy by virtue of our merits. May no living creature suffer, commit evil, or ever fall ill. May no one be afraid or belittled with a mind weighed down by depression. May the blind see forms and the deaf hear sounds. May those whose bodies are worn with toil be restored on finding repose. May the naked find clothing, the hungry find food. May the thirsty find water and delicious drinks. May the poor find wealth, those weep with sorrow find joy. May the forlorn find hope, constant happiness, and prosperity. May there be timely rains and bountiful harvests. May all medicines be effective and wholesome prayers bear fruit. May all who are sick and ill quickly be freed from their ailments. Whatever diseases there are in the world, may they never occur again. May the frightened cease to be afraid, and those bound be freed. May the powerless find power, and may people think of benefiting each other. For as long as space remains, for as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. And then page 244 for the long life prayer of His Holiness. In the land encircled by snow mountains, you are the source of all happiness and good. All powerful Chenrezig, Tenzin Gyatso, please remain until samsara ends. And then what page is it on, y'all's?
34.
Okay, whoops.
334.
It's not on page 2. Okay. Okay. Now I gotta move this out of the way. No, I don't. Okay. Whoops, how'd that happen? I just lost it.
Fancy.
Yeah. It's control.
Okay, it's back. I was trying to move some other menu thingy that's on my screen that's not showing up on yours, but I think I just won't. No, I have that sharing screen thing. Okay. Peerless teacher and assembly of the children of the victorious ones, Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas, victorious Lozon father and sons, along with the lineage masters, all the objects of infinite lands, please bestow the virtue and goodness of accomplishing this prayer here and now. Holding and spreading the Muni's precious and complete teachings through explanation and practice, you wore the armor of patience that's never discouraged. Incomparable venerable Guru, to you I make request, while striving single-pointedly for the sake of the victorious one's teachings, the sole gateway through which all benefit and happiness emerge, and for mother living beings, you suddenly departed to peace. What a great loss. Nevertheless, through the undeceiving truth of the blessings of the ocean of the three jewels and the great waves of bodhicitta of the children of the victorious ones, may the smile of reincarnation swiftly beam and glory for fortunate disciples. Okay. You can stop the recording. So thank you. Thanks for all your participation.